I'm surprised at the European Economic Community. They're trying to come together and form technically one country. Now, this is so impossible that I never thought that they would even attempt this. Recently, in today's news, I discovered that the certain banks in England that have started to pay out big bonuses after having been bailed out or a loan, acquired a loan from the government to be something outrageous. Now, they seem to have forgotten recent history that we had the same experience here in America. And how come they hadn't planned for it and perhaps put it into the contracts that, we have to be reasonable here and so on. Maybe no bonus, whatever. And then other regulations that the political federal system in Europe will have to dictate things to various states, nations that become states if it's a country, European Economic Community. And many of them are upset with this. Now, I recall that long ago when empires ruled, nationhood and nationalism and national identity and cultures weren't so distinctive and so pervasive and very essential. But after the rise of city-states and so on, and people started to move for independence, now to move back into a federation, I find it very hilarious. However, the socio-cultural and political aspect is one. But God had predicted that such a thing would happen. You had in the Daniel the image of that Nebuchadnezzar saw in a dream, and he was told that the golden head was Babylon. Then the silver was Medo-Persia, the bronze was Greece, the iron was Rome, and then in this period here it's iron and clay. And the prophet recorded God's thought as this, that just as how iron and clay can't mix, so that the nations of the world will never ever become one empire again. So whether you're talking economics, you're talking about political systems, you're talking about cultural institutions, whatever you're talking about, nothing is going to dominate the world. You see, during earlier times, the Soviet Union had people sleeping, insomnia and nightmares and all kind of funny stuff. And I told them that, why worry about the Soviet Union? It will never ever take over the world. Communism will never ever take over the world. And so any other system can't too. But what's ironic though, in Europe, you have nations that could be considered iron and nations that could be considered clay. And they're trying to put them together. And God said iron and clay can't mix, so you would have no one nothing. Now, apart from being universal one world power, even within regions where the iron and the clay do exist, this just can't come together. So I don't really waste time with stuff like this. I mean, if I could see that it really can't work, I'm just gonna go along with the flow, and I'm not even worried with it. So I hope these folks in Europe go to do it. I mean, it may not necessarily lead to any big set of, military conflicts, whatever. I hope, but it's just an exercise in futility. Um, some people, like in the Caribbean, for example, there was a loose movement towards integration. But what they discovered was that certain countries they were using one currency, and some were spending overseas the foreign reserves in a way that they hadn't contributed to. In other words, there might be one state that has a great thing going and earned mucho foreign dollars. And this state that doesn't have any foreign interaction perhaps and doesn't bring in anything is spending the money. And that was causing a problem. You see, it's hard really to merge everybody who has had an identity and a language distinction to into a solid something that you will overlook such things. And furthermore, previously, some states in the Caribbean, because they were doing well, they were sort of like, oh, we don't want this thing, we don't want to integrate. But when they moved to the movement, these states had suffered a reversal in their finances, and others were had the upper hand, the ascendancy, and so there you have it. Man, you were playing all these games in the past. Now look at you today. You want to take our bucks and spend it, and you didn't want to lend us when you were in power. That might sound insular and petty, but it's a human condition, and there are other ways this same principle will show up itself: the past and the present, the changes, and so on. So, the European Economic Community, as some religious leaders like Van Impe and others, were saying that the Bible talks about 10 toes and so on, and three were uprooted and one took its place. And they say, well, it would go up to 13, and then three would be knocked off, and then it would come back to 10 and all that stupidness. And all it was saying, there were 10, three were knocked off, and one took its place. That knocked off the three took its place. So you have 8. So it has nothing to do with the EEC or anything of the sort. It has to do with an existence. In other words, there were 10 viable or peoples. 3 were written off, at least politically and so on, and one took their place. So that was that. So this European experiment, basically, I'm being optimistic and pragmatic and everything at the same time. So hey, have fun in Europe.